Good afternoon, everybody. In Portugal, in Europe, outside Europe, everywhere where streets are. Welcome again to another session of the Future Design of Street webinar. Session 3. It's today about transforming infrastructures. And infrastructures in the sense of a structure, urban structure, and social structure, and maybe also all kind of urban networks structures. A lot of structures, but basically the streets, it's about that. A social structure, but it's also the structure of the city, the town, of the village, or the territory, anywhere. And basic element of our daily life, but also a basic element, how we design organizing cities and city environments. Welcome from everybody. We have again a beautiful session today. My name is Casas. I'm urbanist and urban planner. And we are doing this webinar on 3 universities in Portugal. The University of Portugalense, University of Minho, Escola de Arquitetura, Arte e Design, and the Valle Faculty of Architecture, University of Porto. Today we are together. Next to me, also Ivo Oliveira is with us, and also Bruno Moreira and Teresa Correira, that are working very hard on the back side of this webinar, making everything possible on digital platform. Before I'm going to start to introduce our guests from Lisbon, Prague and Brussels, it's about, let's say, what is the question of this webinar? Well, the general question is always about how do we face all this societal and sustainable and economical challenges in our world, in our city, and how do we need to adapt our streets or make streets differently in terms of mobility or green structure, climate adaptation, etc., etc. How do we do the proximity of the city or all the kind of issues? Well, as streets are the basic elements of cities and urban structure, they form in many cities like 80 or maybe 90% of the public space. So it's an important daily life thing. It's the essential element in a way, perhaps not the specials as the parks and the plazas, but if they are not good, we know that it's not good. Anyway, today, the startings today, we have 3 wonderful speakers from Brussels. We have Milène, Deneubourg. Thank you very much to accept, let's say, the invitation. It comes from geography, urban planner at the Free University of Brussels, specialized in regional planning. Now she works as Perspective.Brussels. That, of course, has this strategy of the large Brussels territory that I think in itself it's a complexity of all kinds of layers and sub-layers, and not only in the territorial point of view or streets or infrastructure, but also in a governmental kind of view. And she is responsible, in charge of elaboration of 3 master development plans in that region. Vojtěch Benedikt from Prague, welcome. Also, thank you very much for the invitation. He works at the Institute of Planning and Development of the city of Prague. As a civil engineering, his background details design and urban spaces, how you write it, to the urban and transport planning. Well, I think that's exactly what we are talking today of, and also in this webinar. It's always about different kind of disciplines. So we are really glad that you are here, showing and sharing something about Prague and their projects. And of course, you have also, besides experience where you work now, also in UK and Sweden. Last but not least, João, Rafael, Santos, thank you very much. You as well, you accept the invitations. You are maybe the most academical one of us. And that's also a kind of interesting thing about this webinar. We bring together academical, practices people, and all the people that are in between consulting and governmental things. So I think this exchange is wonderful in this sense. You are an assistant professor at the University Lisbon School of Architecture and coordinate the URB in-lab research group. Especially what you mentioned is your research in the region of Lisbon about the infrastructure. And of course, there is a lot of things about streets. Anyway, that was for my part an introduction. I think we have a full program, so we would like to start directly. And today we are going to start with Prague and to show, and I give Vojtěch the word and also the screen. If you can share your screen, we will start. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining in. Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. Today I would like to talk about a project that we've designed and at the Institute of Planning in Prague, and we've also partly built this project. It's already some of its part inside, which you will see in a second. First, very little bit about me. My name is Vojtěch Benedikt, and as Daniel said, I'm a transport planner at the Institute of Planning of the city of Prague. I have been involved in this project in its later stages, but I hope that I will tell the story from the beginning right. I would like to start with this picture. It's a picture of part of the finished product, so it's a bit of a spoiler for you. But this picture, I think, tells the story of the redesign of the streets really well. On the left side, the modern building that you see is a new modern from 1970s. It's a building of the National Museum. And on the right side is the old building of also old building of National Museum from 1880s. And what's important is the queue of people. You can see on the bottom right. These people are queuing for the grand reopening of the National Museum, and also it's the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the Czechoslovakian Republic. So you can feel that this date was really important. But the reconstruction of the museum was not. It alone did not make the. It was not enough. So we needed to recreate the space. Basically the space for these people to queue, and you'll see how the space looked before. But first, the location. So this is the urban structure of Prague, and you can see the red dot in the middle is our location. So it's indeed very central. It's on the edge of the old city. This is a little bit zoomed in. So the building right in the middle is the old building of National Museum. Next to it, if you can see my pointer, next to it, it's the a new modern building of the National Museum, the State Opera, and a multi-story car park. Very briefly about history. So this is the new town, as I was talking about, and this was the embankment in 1816, one of the first plans that we have of Prague. Then later the embankment was even more reinforced, and right here in the middle is our site that I'm talking about. And now in 1880s, you can see that the museum was already planned and partly built. And you can see that instead of the embankment, there is now a large park and a boulevard going to the north, and also a very important square, which is basically the center of the new town of Prague. And now here, there is an expansion of the city. So the site is no longer on the edge of the embankment, but it's now in the very center. And you can see in 1930s, that the central location of this site is even more reinforced by the expansion to the east. What's important on this map as well is the black lines, which is the tram lines, which were present in most of the main streets. Especially important is this street, which connects the new expansion to the Wenceslas Square, and you will understand why I pointed out in a second. Here on the photo. You can see that right next to the site, there is also a large train station. Still, you can see the park, the boulevard in front of train station, and that this site, the National Museum, is very much the center of all the roads, of all the squares. So there's a lot of pedestrian activity, a lot of public transport activity, and so on. But as you all know, when we invented color photography, we also invented highways going through centers of cities. So in this 96 picture, you can see that there is now a highway going right through here, a multi-story car park, another multi-story car park, and the highway is going in front as well as in the back of the museums and the National Opera. So that's this space is what we needed to recreate. I will zoom in a little bit to a picture of 2015. Here you can see that the museums are basically straddled between the highway and yeah, it's a large traffic junction, not very pleasant place for people queue up, basically. Not very pleasant for all the pedestrians that are walking from the new expansion to the town. Also, you can notice that there's no longer any tram in here, which used to be. It's because in the 70s, a metro line underground was built, and it was thought that the tram was no longer needed, so it was removed. More on that later. You can see some pictures of before. So you see the before reconstruction, the old museum building, and The public space in front is basically a car park and a highway junction. On the other side of the building, there is a large park, which was quite dilapidated, not very well kept, and it was a place you would really not want to go at night. And then this curious picture is actually not very old. It's from the year 2000, but this building was briefly the site of the Radio Free Europe, so it needed to be protected against terrorism by these concrete blocks and the armored vehicles. So this is the public space that we wanted to recreate in a space for people, not space for armed trucks. So how we've done it? Thanks to the large pressure of the reconstruction of the museum, as I mentioned, and also of the jubilee of the Republic, of the Czechoslovakian Republic, the 100 years, we were given a task in the Institute of Planning and Development to recreate this area. And we wanted to recreate it not just on surface level, but we wanted to make sure that it's sustainable, future-proof, and that it really brings something new to the people that are using the space. So the name Museum Oasis, now you maybe understand where it comes from. It's an oasis basically in a desert of traffic, but in the middle it connects the new building of the National Museum, the old building, and recreates the park. It also has an aim to bring back the tram line, which was taken up after the metro was introduced. Now I will show you a few pictures from the construction. Here you can see the space being recreated. We tried to make it one unified space, no asphalt, no sidewalk, all just paving. Here on the bottom left, you can see the tram tracks laid, but they're dead end. They don't really lead anywhere. But we insisted that they need to be there to show the future potential of the site, to show that there will be a tram stop, and that the future politicians of the next city government will have to implement this tram, because people now see the tram stop and they will want the connection back. We've rejuvenated the current trees. There was a lot of compacted soil, so we involved a lot of new sustainable practices, how to air the tree roots and create some more space for the trees to thrive. And the new trees that we've planted in this strata cells, which are like plastic. You probably know if you're if you're interested in street design. They're basically allow the trees to grow their roots in between all the infrastructure, and they also allow the trees to be weighed down from above in case there is a need for any loading on top. And also that was the first time we've used it in Prague, so we wanted really to experiment. So this is the previously not well-used park, which we've created into this festive park. It's really to complement the festivity of the building, or the importance of the building. You can see that in the park design. Here on where the new trees were planted, you can also see that the paving has a wider slit, so it can the water can permeate into the paving and it can be collected down in the root area. And we have tested this with a large canister of water, and it works really well. It takes a few hundred liters at one go. And here you can of course see the people queuing for the grand reopening, but luckily we have managed to set the time limits of the deadlines for the project, so that once the opening was done, they were already queuing in a finished new environment, which was not a busy interchange of a highway anymore. It was a place for people to walk through and even relax. As I mentioned, it's a partly finished product. We're always developing it. We're always moving it a little bit forward. So what's the next stages? This is a sneak peek in what's to come. As I mentioned, the tram was removed earlier, but now we're trying to reintroduce it here, connecting the new expansion to the east to the Wenceslas Square here, as it used to go 50 years ago. And with that introduction, we believe that this space will become completely pedestrianized in complement with the tram. So it will even more connect the two buildings. And yeah, also the next step is that you might wonder why there is this triangle still. There is even a further step. which will bring a tram link to the train station as well. So in the reintroduction of the tram is a big topic right now, and we all believe at the Institute that it's a good basically bringing life to these spaces, which previously were only used as car junctions. Luckily, this part here has already a planning permission, so we're looking forward to building it. And this part here is awaiting a planning permission, so we're also hoping that very soon, maybe next time you visit Prague, you will already take a tram to this site. So I want to finish with the same picture that I started with, and the reason is that if there is a good and strong story that you can tell, and the story can support the regeneration of a street, of a square, of a street space, then you're basically halfway there. So if you can find a good story, then you can recreate the street and create something for the people instead for something only for traffic. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Vojtěch. I like the quote very much about where we invented the color photography. We invented also the highways or the motorways. I don't know exactly how you said it, but this is a kind of interesting thing, and also looking back to history. It's look more and more often that we learn more from yesterday and bring it also to the future again. So trams is a kind of interesting thing, and of course the pavement, etc. So thank you, Vojtěch, for your story. We come back on the discussion on that. Milène, may I invite you to share your screen and turn on the microphone as well. Very good.
Let's put the full screen. Is it okay for you?
Yes, perfectly.
Fine. Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. I will talk about the project called Delta Herman-de-Broux. We are here in Belgium, in Brussels, so Brussels, capital of Belgium. And the project of Herman-de-Broux is located here in the municipalities of Oedergem. So Brussels is the concentration of 19 municipalities, and Oedergem is one of these municipalities. I work for Perspective Brussels. So it's the public operator and the center of expertise about the regional development strategy. And we are responsible for different aspects. First of all, the statistics of the region, also the socioeconomic information, and the last point is the strategic and regulatory territorial planning in the Brussels region. So about the perimeter of this project, it's a quite big and large perimeter. It's the area in the red line here. So it's a very long spaghetti, I will say. And it includes the E411. So it's a big highway. And we have also 5 different sites in this area. And so the project is about the reconversion of a road infrastructure, so the E411, into an urban boulevard, but also about the transformation of these 5 monofunctional sites. And so first of all, a few years ago, we started a definition study to have a photography of the area, and we have some information about the area. So first of all, the E411 is an important metropolitan axis. Because more or less 4,000 cars are coming every morning between 8 and 9 into Brussels via this axis. So it's quite a lot of people and cars. So it's a main infrastructure, a main transport infrastructure, of course. It's also a place where the situation for pedestrian and cyclist is not very sure. And another point is that we don't have a public place or a center. Another point is that we have a lot of different pieces of a puzzle because we have different parks, different rivers, but they are all disconnected from each other. And my last point about this definition study is that we are in a monofunctional area where we have a lot of office buildings. And so a few years ago, we started working on a master plan, what we call here in Brussels a PAD, Plan d'Aménagement Directeur. So I will talk about a master plan. And it's a new tool where we have a strategic section, but also a regulatory section. And so the goals and the ambitions of this plan, this master plan, and this project are multiple. First of all, we would like to increase the life quality and the living together in this area, in this municipality, and also in the region. We would like to reconnect all the pieces of the puzzle. We would like to increase the number of public spaces, also the place for pedestrian, and of course, so decrease the use of the car. And we would like also to increase the functional mix. So first of all, to do this, the first ambition is to redesign the road. And the first point of the study and the master plan was to propose to demolish a big viaduct, which is more or less 1 kilometer long. It's the viaduct Herman de Brou. And so the master plan proposed to destroy this viaduct. Here you have two illustrations. The first illustration is about the situation, the actual situation. You can see the representation of the viaduct with 4 lanes only for cars, and on the ground, a lot of lanes also for cars. So the place for pedestrian and bicycle and also public transport is absent at this moment. And so in the future, we would like to destroy this viaduct and redesign the road into an urban boulevard with only 4 lanes for cars and more place for pedestrian, as you can see here, and also 2 lanes for the public transport. Another proposition in the master plan is the construction of a big parking right. And we had to find the ideal location and to find a balanced solution between different aspects. So we had to connect this parking to a public transport. It was also necessary to find a location outside the protected area called Natura 2000. And the last one, the location has to be close to the border between the Brussels region and the Flemish region. And so the location is finally this one called Stad. The master plan proposes also to connect this park and ride to a new tram line, the tram number 8, and the tram will directly connect the park and ride to the city center of Brussels. We are also working on 5 different monofunctional sites. You have the illustration of this different sites here. As you can see, we have 2 big parking, 2 places with offices, and a brownfield. And the goals for this area are to increase the public spaces, to increase the functional mix, and to increase the porosity on this site. And now I have some pictures, some illustration about, on the left, the situation now, and on the right, the situation in the future. So as you can see here, we are on the E411. You can see a lot of lanes for car, more than 7 lanes, I think, at this place. And in the future, you can see an urban boulevard of 4 lanes for cars, and on the right, the extension of the tramway to connect the park and ride to the city center. Another illustration, as you can see on the left, we have this Deneubourg viaduct now, and in the future, this viaduct will disappear for this urban boulevard, this area with tram and buses, of course, and finally a place for pedestrians and bicycles. Another view, here you have this building is a metro station, and on the left you have a shopping mall. And so the ambition is to remove this lane for cars and to create a direct connection between the metro station and the shopping mall with a large public space. Another view of the project, here it's, as you can see, it's completely impossible to cross the street. And in the future, it will be possible because we will destroy the viaduct. So it will be possible to reconnect the 2 parts of these municipalities. Here we have another view of the shopping mall on the left, and on the right you have the proposal of a new public space with different shops around the public space. Here also another view. As you can see, actually we have a big parking on the left, and the goal is to transform this area into a new neighborhood with more place for also pedestrians and bicycles. Yes, another point about the stakeholders, because we have a lot of administrations here in Brussels, so they were all involved in the development of the master plan, and all the municipalities were also involved. Of course, the municipalities of Ottergem, but these 2 also, Ixelles and Watermal-Boisfort. And also we had the participation of citizens. And for example, we organized different workshops and sessions of information with the public and the citizen living in the region and in the municipalities. And my last point is about the next steps. So we have now to develop the operational vision. For example, we have to find some budget. And so it's quite a big project and a lot of challenges. We have also to study each element of the plan further. And the last one is to determine which stakeholder is responsible for which task. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milène. I think I had exactly these questions, what you said at the end, and what's next and how we do it and everything, but maybe we can pinpoint it to the discussion. One thing that I want to mention is, in a way, it's amazing seeing more and more of this kind of projects, and I think Brussels is an example in that. Already realized projects, but also seeing things to the future is, if you just take out or reduce the space of cars, then suddenly you have space for pedestrians, cyclists, public space, green. You know, you have a lot of things. So it's kind of interesting to see that, and of course Prague shows that as well. Thank you for now. João, we are going to Lisbon, the Lisbon region. So I would like to invite you to start your presentation and share your insights with us.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the kind invitation. It's really a pleasure to be with you and share this common interest in infrastructures and in streets, and particularly the way how they are being redesigned and relived somehow in our cities. So as Daniel already presented myself, I'm currently coordinating a research project at the Lisbon School of Architecture. And we are particularly interested in understanding how the street and actually the public space, more than streets, the global and more complex public space has been transforming in Lisbon metropolitan area in the past 20 years. We are in a team with different schools, also the University of Porto, also the School of Agronomy with landscape architecture, and of course our own school with urbanism, with the institutional support of Lisbon metropolitan area, because we want to engage also this metropolitan vision and the stakeholders into this perspective. Nowadays, public space is a competence of the municipalities mostly, but we feel that it lacks a wider and metropolitan-wise perspective. So it's a bit of a challenge that we put in our project to bring a bit of that perspective and challenges. So this research project that you can see a bit of it ongoing, it's available on the internet site. It has this big, long name, Building the Foundations of a Metropolitan Public Space Network to support the robust, low-carbon and cohesive city projects, lessons, and prospects in Lisbon. So actually, to make it more simple, we are particularly aimed at mapping, decoding, assessing, and discussing the results of these multiple interventions of the public space improvement in the past 20 years, especially since 1998. It was the Expo 98 project that changed considerably the mindset in terms of public space and urban development in Lisbon. And we have this hypothesis that if we think of it increasingly at a metropolitan scale, we have better chances to use public space to interconnect and integrate various fields of the city. And so it's also a tool, an interesting tool to respond to today's societal challenges. And looking back a bit, we have had in the past 20 years many different sorts of public space transformation. And either in local scale, in different locations, central city, historical areas, waterfronts, heavy infrastructural space. And of course, these, as part of these, many streets have also been reshaped. But we are interested not only in the streets, but also in parks, green infrastructure, of course, the mobility system. Also the spaces with critical lacking of basic infrastructure, illegally developed areas that have been an important part of our urban development process, which are facing very critical challenges even today. So how can we also intervene on some of these in these areas? Danielle told I'm from the academic side, so we always like to have this kind of more theoretical framework, or at least some inspirations. I'm not going to go too much into this, but this idea that public space today is far more diverse and hybrid than perhaps a few decades ago. This idea that very much aligns with the topic of our session, that we can understand public space as an infrastructure of the metropolis, so something that can really go beyond the city and the neighborhood and the local scale. And finally, of course, this idea that Ramon Torre from Barcelona, which has a long experience in this issue, that public space is the ultimate democratic space. And of course, it's something that is quite inspiring for us. We have been mapping these interventions. So far we mapped over 900 interventions. About more than 380 are concerned about requalification of streets and roads. Actually, many more roads and streets, because sometimes the projects have more than one road inside, of course. So it's quite an expressive object to look into, and to have to try to look in an interpretive way and discuss its potential. The presentation will be mostly based in some drawings that we are doing as part of our methodological approach. It's a more interpretative approach, using drawing as an element, as a tool. And we see that streets are just about one part of the potential to integrate public space into different dimensions. For instance, the way how linear spaces, including the green infrastructure of streams, urban rivers, how they are integrated into the hydrological challenges that our cities face today, they are setting the pace for some suburban regeneration strategies in some neighborhoods. In the municipal limits between Lisbon, the central city, and some of its peripheral municipalities, we see very critical neighborhoods, social housing neighborhoods, very dense, low-income neighborhoods being also redeveloped or regenerated, starting with public space improvements, trying to stitch the limits between the central city and some of its outlying areas. Also more prominent, even monumental areas with strong heritage and historical value, the waterfronts in central Lisbon, that incrementally are being developed into a more leisure-oriented, but still with a strong presence of heavy infrastructural mobility systems that articulate the local dimension with the metropolitan dimension. In the south bank of the Tagus River, still the waterfronts, not from the big city, the monumental city, but these more fragile, I would say, more discrete elements of public space that interact with natural elements, the landscape value of this side of the river, which is very contrasting with the north side, in which the river trenches design a completely different landscape. The large, extensive, low density areas that have been developed in illegal patterns that have been slowly being requalified, introducing very, very basic infrastructure, the sidewalk, the public lighting, sewage systems, some things that are basic, but in some parts were not there at all. So this is also part of this process. Or a case in Setúbal, it's a medium-sized city inside of the metropolitan area, in which the more diverse historical and urban development process also allows to explore a much more diverse nature of the public spaces, large parks, street requalification, waterfront requalification, social house, public space. So these are the objects that we are looking into. We are also trying to focus on a few case studies. We cannot go into all of the 900 cases, of course, but a few cases are being developed into more detail. These ones, for instance, these are the 3 cases in the Lisbon municipality, so the central city. But if we go a bit to the outside, we have areas that have a very strong critical social neighborhood condition. Also streets in areas that were shaped based on a rustic structure. So part of the suburban development occurred on a rustic pattern of small roads that became very heavy traffic roads, and slowly they are being requalified because they also cross these old settlements that now are the only potential spaces for collective memory and collective living. And these articulations that sometimes are done in incremental stage, for instance, by an incremental redevelopment of some commercial areas that then entangles and continues incrementally to the street development around it, and further on into a large-scale blue and green infrastructure project. So these are the kind of sequence that we are interested in establishing, with different layers, trying to see how different components of the city are somehow articulated through these interventions: accessibility, walkability, cyclability, also the idea of porosity. So this, how the widening of some sidewalks may improve the commercial attractiveness, the potential expansion or extension of the private domain into the public domain. So these kind of drawings trying to explain a bit of that. Another one in the central area, the 19th century boulevard in central Lisbon, that was it was characterized by very heavy traffic, that was redeveloped in a more consistent and urban-friendly, walkable-friendly, cycle-friendly space, connecting the different paths of the city and its structure, green structure. And of course, we need also to focus on some samples in which we understand better the different components, the surface components that interact in these public spaces. So again, this is also the idea of porosity in a very different part of the city in which we are exploring. And this is just the last picture, because the process is ongoing. It's a 3 years project, so we are still on in the first year. This is a change in one of those low-income, illegally developed area in which everything was missing in terms of public space, and the small but surgical transformation of a playground, a sidewalk, controlling and creating the rules for car parking and making the sidewalks walkable. These are very, very local and simple things, but that they have a very strong social impact. And so we are very much trying to understand how this transformation impacted in the 3 different fields: the fields of the social cohesion, the fields of active mobility and walkability, and the field of environmental robustness. So mainly the issue of the green and blue infrastructure, together with municipalities, but also showing and sharing with the wider public, with more democratic approach, let's say, the huge engagement, the huge transformation that this piece by piece transformation has fostered, and hopefully, if understood in a more integrated, cohesive way at a wider scale, with municipalities talking to each other and creating intermunicipal projects, perhaps going even further on this challenge. So thank you very much.
Thank you, João. Thank you for giving us an insight in the ongoing project. Research projects that normally you just present after it. So I thank you also to do that, because I think it's also really interesting to know not only in Portugal but also outside what's happening and what kind of research is done. I was amazed about how many projects actually in the region, to be honest. And it's just a really simple question: is it mainly projects of transformation, intervention of existing public spaces, or is it also about really new projects?
Okay, it's something that I should have clarified from the beginning. It's mostly the requalification. We define that as a research boundary. We were not going into the newly developed, let's say, expansive public space, because of course, if you look back to 20 years, there has been, of course, urban growth, urban development, which produced new public space, new streets, new squares. So we were not going into that. We were particularly interested in the requalification. Sometimes, in special moments, there is the creation of new space, but not from an urban development perspective, as part of a private-led market development. So the requalification is the main focus. This is together with another issue, which is mostly it's funded by the public sector, municipalities, or even government authorities, which leads us to the issue of policies, which is something that we are also interested in understanding. Who is funding, why is funding, what's the rationale of all of this?
Okay, very good. Very good that you clarified, because I almost got the conclusion that that it's more about transformation than new ones. But we have a lot of new ones that I didn't show you, and that is perhaps another research. Well, it brings me in a way, if I just go also larger to the other cities in a way, is that transformation of existing infrastructure, well, you can do it in really different manners. It's depending on policies, financial, let's say, also, let's say, what is, let's say, the opening of the local authorities, or regulation, or investment plans, of course. But how do you deal, let's say, with the bigger picture in a sense? So perhaps, Milène, just to ask you first, because you showed one project. And of course, we know all that we cannot isolate that space as a system in thing. How do you face, let's say, that challenging that, you know, okay, you have to study one piece of infrastructure that you are doing transforming, but it has also an effect on the whole network in a way. How do you face this challenging in your project, in especially in this master plan vision?
Yes.
Yes.
We have there are different aspects, because we have also a strategic map in plan about mobility at the scale of the region, the Brussels region. So we have different ambition at the scale of the Brussels region. And so at this level, we already studied the different impact of the different goals of the different projects on the region. And on this project, on Deneubourg project, we are also working on a study on the environmental impacts. So it includes the impact on the street and the area all around the neighborhood of the E411, but also on the different street, on the different municipalities around, and also on the different region, because we are just at the border with the Flemish region. So we have to study all these aspects in the globality of the project, and we have to deal with this. And it's also a big question of the citizen, the impact of the project on their life, on their street, etc.
Okay, a lot of issues, and then a lot of, let's say, intermunicipality and
exactly.
How does it work in Lisbon, João? Staying, let's say, at the level of the region. how is the collaboration between the municipalities? Is it all for itself, or is there a kind of, let's say, collaboration to, because well, streets never stops at the border, they continue often.
Well, yes, I would say that fortunately we are seeing interesting steps towards a better coordination. I would say that it's still a recent trend. It's perhaps we would have liked to see it for a longer time, but the truth is that well, if we again looking at the bigger picture in not just in Lisbon, in Portugal, we were facing huge challenges in terms of urbanization and with basic infrastructure, missing basic facilities. Portugal was facing until the 1990s very critical shortages, and public space is something that the quality of public space is something that starts to be seen in a more systematized approach, I would say, in the transition to the 21st century. This leads first to I would say an incremental process in which perhaps the municipalities are the first players, so looking at their own particular situations. But I would say that since the past 10 years, we start seeing some projects, so still not as many as we would like, but a few in which continuities regarding ecological structures, cycling, mobility plans that cross the borders of the cities, even the reorganization of waterfronts. So very clear situation in which the continuity is very strong and very visible. I would say that we have good experiences and potential for development. Still, I would say that we would like to make this argument that perhaps it's the time to start looking really in terms of coordination, planning, in funding at a new level, a metropolitan level. I think we could go much further. Still, it's very much the municipalities which are starting to work together.
Very good. I have to say it was probably a really complex question as well, because this is often all about this coordination and things on it. And maybe go to Prague. I know you showed, of course, a project that is about let's say an important historical building and with, of course, with a cultural historical value for not only Prague but for all the country, I guess. And before, let's say, the color photo, we had also, let's say, white black and white photos to stay with this let's say framing, and then suddenly there were the railway tracks introduced, knowing as well some other initiatives and competitions in Prague more to the north of this area. How do you see this project inside the network of this highway that goes urban highway, if you can say it's probably not an highway, but it's large infrastructure towards north? How do you see that future?
Thank you. Very good question. It is a very hot topic, political hot topic in Prague. It's called Magistrala, the Magistral, or so it's the main north-south axis for car traffic, and we don't have problem with people who live within Prague. The model share for car traffic is about 30%, so the 60% remaining is sustainable transport. But from the region, most people, 80%, go into the city by car. So that is something that, as João and Milène mentioned, the cooperation with the region is key here to create the railway infrastructure and so on. But this highway itself, in I believe it was 2016, we have commissioned Gale architects from Denmark to come to Prague to help us to have a look at it and see if there are any things that we can start doing and not cut it off right away, because that's very hard step to do for politicians, also traffic engineers, and the citizens, of course, because they are using it every day. So what Young Girl Studios advised was to start incrementally. So bring the space to more human scale. So less focus on the traffic while keeping the highway how it is right now, or let's call it highway, but create some more quality public space. So this project itself is one of the, let's say, one of the marbles on the string of the highway that we're trying to improve. So next there is the space right in front of the main train station, which is going to get more pedestrian crossings, better quality sidewalks. So it's these incremental changes that we're trying to propose. But on the other hand, when there is a competition, for example, recently there was a competition for a Florence area, which is about 1 kilometer north of this museum. And we've asked the international contestants, the architect firms, to not just design the master plan, but also to think, let's say, vision for the future, how the space will look without this highway. So it was not completely part of the competition, but they have all produced 3D visualizations and their ideas for the future. And I think this is key to show the vision, which how it could look without. And so we have now many international teams have completed this vision. So we now have a lot of visions to choose from. And now the citizens and the politicians have something to look at and think, okay, maybe one day it can look like this if we do these incremental changes.
Okay, very good. And it is still at this moment under discussion on public debate, this competition and let's say results in a way.
The results are closed. There is a winner. So, but it is a master plan for that for a previously railway brownfield. So it's about new streets, new buildings, and all that. But also there is this highway going through. So the contestants were asked to show their vision for how it will look like maybe 1 decade, maybe 2 decades in the future. And they did. So we're very grateful for this vision.
It's in a way kind of interesting. If you can you say, let's say in Brussels, Milène, that by doing a master plan, by using, let's say, images and schemes and ideas and everything, that help you, let's say, to discuss with the population in one way, but also what you said. Well, okay, we have now a master plan. I mean, we don't have a budget. So we need now a budget. So it's kind of a lot of time we make, let's say, images when we have the budget already. But it's look like it's other way around. Is it an how does it work in Brussels? Is it how is the experience on it? I'm really curious on it.
Yes, it's a good question because yes, the images and the draw were very useful to speak with the public. We really had to create this different illustration to speak with the public. And now, yes, it's true that the question of the budget is always the big question in Brussels. So a few years ago, we had the good momentum to work on this master plan. So we had the instruction from the government to work on this. So we start the work. And yes, at this stage of the project, we have to find the budget. We know a little bit what will be the work on the field. So it's easier to estimate the budget or not. And so we have to now work with the different administration and the different minister to find this budget. Perspective, I must say that we were in charge of the master plan, but we are not in charge of the operational aspect. So it's another administration which is in charge of the operational aspects. But the ambition was also to create and to write a master plan, which is now more or less approved by the government. And so when there is an approval by the government, we must find the budget. It's a little bit the next steps. Otherwise, the master plan has had no impact.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the commitment, the participation, it was having the right, let's say, vision in a way, the idea on how it is, and then do it step by step, baby. But it's a right interesting approach, especially in this large, complex infrastructure with a lot of municipality stakeholders and probably also the state, I guess.
Not really.
No.
It's a little bit complicated.
Okay. I will not ask because
no.
I know. João, do you think that this kind of approach could be interesting for Lisbon? Let's say just to because in Lisbon you have a lot of let's say in between the municipalities you have also a lot of fragmentation in this discontinuity and things, but at the same time. People are commuting every day and using this space. Do you see possibilities within your scope of work to detect, or maybe there were some projects already then?
Well, yes, it's a complex question, particularly linking with the previous conversations and with Milène and Vojtěch. I would say that in Lisbon, the planning framework perhaps doesn't help very much. The formal planning is very much land use regulatory oriented. Then we have a regional strategic plan that perhaps it's too strategic and it doesn't get into a more design oriented guidelines and for instance public space and these more materialized forms of collective space, they are not really an issue, or at least a designed issue at this regional scale. Meaning that you leave the municipalities and the different stakeholders to individual projects that may have funding. For instance, there's a strong presence of EU fundings underlying some of these developments that are part of our research project. So they go after the opportunities and the rationales, the goals are very much aligned with what comes from the funding. Meaning that although you have individual in more individual projects, actually they are very effective in transforming space. So it's not so much the master plan, the formal planning land use system that it's working to upgrade the urban landscape, let's say, but are these individualized projects that are more opportunistic, let's say, which are developed incrementally. That's also something that Vojtěch was mentioning, that it's probably the best and only way to do it, probably if you don't have so many resources and it's a long-term process. Of course, you lack perhaps some coherence in terms of design, materiality. When you change from one segment to another, you will feel that change. But at the same time, there are expectations that are getting higher and higher. When you see something that in your municipality is getting better and you see the neighbor, there are contaminations, positive contaminations. And so, as you told, people move from one place to another, from one municipality to the other. And so this incrementality and this, let's say, efficiency of project delivery, because it has some kind of funding associated with it, is actually is a robust tool. I would like to see some of these, what Milène showed, these more designed images for a wider picture that would also give us a stronger, coherent, and inspirational perspective for the future on a more wider scale. It's something that we are working. Let's see.
Yeah, let's say this is the how do you say, it's always the dilemma in a way, in especially in countries where the resources are quite limited, or limited, is that you rather can do a really good project and then step by step maybe this. But do you feel that analyzing these projects along 20 years, that you see in the discussion or how the design assignment is formulated and everything, rather than, of course, they are isolated or they are individual, but I can imagine that some of them, they have a bigger goal, like Vojtěch in Prague said that we are going to put a tram line and we know that's going to be extensive. Do you see something like this in the, let's call it, generation of projects, so that every...
Clearly.
Yeah?
Yes. I think it's quite clear. You can, if you look at the projects developed on the first 5 to 10 years of our time frame, they are clearly more local oriented. Eventually, some of them would also have a long-term perspective of becoming bigger, but they are clearly more local oriented, and you have a new generation in the past 10. So if you want to split these in two decades, clearly the more recent decade, last 10 years, is you see a multiplication of bigger scale projects, at least trying to establish more continuous systems, engaging with, imagine, road requalification, this long cycle paths, linear parks, so things that are working towards a systemic and bigger scale approach to this transformation, definitely. Okay. The first, just to give you an example, in Lisbon, the first ones were squares. So the square is okay, it's a node, it's an important element, but it's something that is very localized. But from then on, you start to seeing streets and then networks of streets and some continuities. There's also an interesting project, actually a program of projects, which in Lisbon, which is one square in each neighborhood. So even, and this was starting to be developed around 2012. So what you see is, although they are pointed interventions, they are, at that time, they also started to be seen as a network, so a distribution. So definitely, I think there is a change, and then the most recent decade shows a good change, I would say.
And is it, let's say, then within the project and the project leader or the people that are involved that have this aspiration or know-how, because they work longer time in the municipality or wherever, that they see this systemic approach? Or is it what you mentioned, there are several programs that they are not planned, or so they are not projects, they are not plans, but they indicate kind of vision or look to it? Is it, let's say, a combination of those things?
It's a difficult question and difficult really to answer in aware and with data that we would have to go deeper. So it's what I can give you. It's a feeling. It's not so much of a very robust research output. No, but what we feel is that there is in the past years, in the past decades, that has been a very important reinforcement of the, let's say, municipalities, and not just municipalities, the public administration in charge of these processes, a strong reinforcement of the technical staff, architects, landscape architects, planners, geographers, and the sophistication of those human resources has been directing a more sophisticated approach to the city, and of course as a system, a multidimensional system, and so I would argue that it's very much maybe it's not translated into very clear programs, plans, and images, but I think there is an underlying human infrastructure that is supporting a more coherent approach to urban planning and urban project development in Lisbon and in Portugal generally.
Yeah. Without human, we don't have planning and projects.
No, yes.
Well, that's for sure. In a way, it's about human, also about public space, but also how to do it. In a way, being a little bit on the systemic thinking, but going to public transport, Vojtěch. The tram I mentioned already. It's look our profession that sometimes we take out something and then later on we think, hey, it was a mistake. We have to put it back. How does this project fits in a kind of overall planning on the system? Because you mentioned a little bit in your presentation. Can you maybe tell us something about those insights?
That's on point question, because this part of the tram that was taken out, basically, as I said, in the 1970s, the metro line was built. It's very deep. The Prague Metro is one of the deepest. There's the topography of Prague, but also it served as a shelter. So it takes a few minutes really to get down on the platform. So from the Wenceslas Square, as I said, that's the main shopping square and basically the center of Newtown. To get anywhere, even 2 stops, it takes a few minutes to get down on the platform, up from the platform. So it doesn't really bring the connectivity for the nearest neighborhood. So tram for that is much better. And this link in particular in the very center, it is very well needed, because now all the surrounding links are at capacity or basically slightly over capacity. So whenever there is any unexpected event, there could be a car crash, or even wrong parked car, which parks partly on the tracks, the trams have to stop. And we have some of the highest frequency trams in the world, we believe. There is the busiest junctions have over 160 trams per hour. So that's 1 tram every 20 seconds, I would say. So if there is a problem, then the trams start queuing up. So this link in particular will help with the variability of the system. So in case there is a reconstruction even of 1 tram line, it can be rerouted through here and so on. And also it will be connecting the Newtown expansion to the Newtown itself. So it is, at this moment, is top priority for the public transport company to get this tramline reintroduced. So of course, as I said, there was support from the, say, importance of the museum, the Jubilee, but also from the public transport perspective, it's very well needed.
And you mentioned 2 things in a way, because you mentioned, let's say, the local stops, because of the metro. I was amazed how fast this automatical stairs are going.
Yes.
It's almost dangerous for someone who's not used to it, but it's practical. But at the same time, you know, the tram set. But and then you mentioned also the region.
Mm-hmm.
Is this tram also a regional system at the same time, or is that more the metro?
Not at the moment. Neither the tram or the metro is going out of the perimeter of Prague, but it depends how we define Prague. By law, Prague, there is a line in the fields which defines Prague, but the city center itself, or the compact city, of course, the metro goes out into the less dense environment, but at the same time, it is still within the bureaucratic boundary of Prague. So in terms of region, we're looking at what Germans call S-Bahn. We also call it the S-Lines, so suburban railway. So that's what we're looking to expand the most in the coming decades.
Okay. And Milène, how is it in Brussels? Because I saw in some of the pictures in light rail, I guess it is. Is this also the strategic, let's say, to make the capacity of public transport higher more local to get the car. Is that the vision in a way?
Yeah, sure. It's clearly one of the ambition of this government and of the Minister of the Public Transport is to improve the public transport in Brussels, to reduce the number of commuters, because we have this big problem in Belgium. A lot of people are living outside the limits of the region, and they are coming every morning by car to Brussels, because most of them receive a car from their companies. So it's a big problem here in Belgium. So, and in Brussels, it's the opposite, because most of the households doesn't have a car. So more than 50%, I think, doesn't have a car in Brussels. So most of the people are using the public transport. So we try to improve the system.
So it's a huge disbalance in the
Yeah.
use of this car space. So people from
Exactly.
the region need it because and that's a system that grow over. In Lisbon, you have something also a lot of commuting, but then specific you have the river there. That is a really big barrier. João. I know that the Setúbal, let's say on the south side, you have 2 bridges at this moment that carry a lot, and if there is an accident happening, then everything is a mess. How do you research that in a way as well? Let's say in the city center that you have still more this pedestrian areas and cycling and more green, but it's also let's say decreasing the amount of parking places at the same time. Are you researching those phenomena as well?
Yes, because they somehow articulate with the process of requalification of the public space. Actually, they have been one of the driving factors of this requalification process. In terms of transportation, there was a big gap between the service in the central city, so in Lisbon municipality, which was more or less well served, and there has been some investment in the subway extension and creating interfaces with the railroad, between the metro and the railroad. So, and there was a more or less working bus network. But when you go outside of the municipality of Lisbon, so the surrounding 17 municipalities around Lisbon, and especially the south side, as you mentioned, they were lacking very good public transport infrastructure. You have the train lines, but they are a few, and so you have lots of urban space which is not really well connected with those lines, which are also radial. So it means that they get you to Lisbon, but if you want to move between them, it's quite difficult. And not everyone is going from their home to Lisbon, and our mobilities are much more diverse nowadays. But there has been some improvements in terms of the interfacing spaces that has been station squares. So things like this have shaped or reshaped some of the spaces. There has been also the development of a light rail system in the South Bank, which is a tram system, very much inspired or developed more or less at the same time of Porto, which of course is a reference also in terms of the architectural design and the public space design that goes along with it. But I would say that we still lack a big push in that. There has been difficulties in investment, in funding for that. There are plans to develop a surface tram network in suburban areas as an alternative to heavier rail infrastructures. And we hope that can be that can lead into interesting public space requalification and urban restructuration along these new lines. But it's something that has been on the news for every year, every election time. You have these projects coming up, and then well, the resources somehow they seem to be lacking.
Yeah.
And,
well, they're large and expensive infrastructure, and they have to take for many decades in a way. But there is an extension plan of the metro system in the north side and a few other things. So I think there is going on thing also here in Porto. So this is also let's say for the coming years a huge project that will have an impact as well on street spaces and urban areas, etc. in the mobility. We have the session today about transforming infrastructure as an, let's say, bodied streets as a structure of the not only the region but also local space. So we already talked about really local scale, region scale, systemic scale, a lot of things in it. Vojtěch, just around about what questions do you have to ask us as a webinar series or a platform that is facing the future design of streets? What can we learn from Prague, and what do you would like to ask us in a way? How we have to deal with this kind of future models of streets?
I think what I want to have the answer to, and I believe maybe all of you as well, is how to get the citizens on your side. So for example, with any project of where you want to change the street, usually people are against change. They can't visualize the future, the different uses that the space can have. And once it's done, if you persevere and you push and you change the streetscape, then people say, of course, this is great. Why haven't you done it sooner? So how to bridge this divide between the before and after, I think through, as I mentioned, visualizations of the future, they help a lot. Maybe through testing of different uses, that's maybe one way. But I think that's one thing that we're struggling with, how to get the public on your side. Because when you get the public on your side of, let's say, progressive street design, then you get the politicians on your side. And when you get the politicians on your side, you have the funding on your side as well. So I think key is getting the public interested in the street redesign, and somehow showing them the potential that the street have, but at scale, I'm not sure how exactly to do that. So if you could advise, that would be great.
Well, we of course definitely don't have a one size fits it all solution on it. More and more, we believe in really, let's say, a tailor-shipped approach. So every project and every city has its history, its system, and everything. But just mention, because I think it's an interesting point of view what you mentioned in a way, and this is particularly interesting because it's not about politics and a political power first, but first population get with you, and then they will follow. So there's a kind of interesting point of view. And often it's other way around how a lot of people think. So this is kind. But you mentioned also Jangel that did a study in it. I know that Jangel is also quite involved with looking to how spaces are really used, etc., and doing a lot of interviews with people. Did that study help in, let's say, this engaging the public? Do you know that?
Yes, I think it has. I think this north-south axis, the highway as we call it, is a hot topic with the public. They all know it, but some would like to increase the capacity because they get stuck on it every day in their cars. Some of them would want to get rid of it because they have to cross it every day, and it's not that easy. And I think when this study came in, it was a bit of a wake-up call in a way to that someone from the outside looked at it and said, look, there is a solution. It's going to hurt. It's going to take some time. There are some steps you can take, but here it is. And I believe it was 2016, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a year earlier. and it has done a little bit of a round on the internet. People are showing the visualization as in the journalists in the news, they were showing the visualizations as in this is what it will look like. But I think the study was showing potential. This is what it could look like. Now you have to take the work and you have to finish it for yourself. And I think now we need to bridge the connection, bridge the expectation from that study, and now slowly implementing the changes so that people still understand we're going from that study, that they were so interested back in the day. And now these small changes along the way are implementations of what we've decided before. But again, that's about communication. And I think that that's where everyone is a little bit lacking to how to communicate clearly what the intentions are behind every project.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. Without communication, we cannot make steps in
Yes.
any way. We cannot understand the elements. So it's own things. Milène, actually, the same questions for you. What can we learn from Brussels? And also all the way around, what kind of questions are you asking us, or all of us, in a way?
Yes, now we are in this operational phase. So we have really a lot of questions. For example, what should we do first? For example, the destruction of the viaduct, or the construction of the parking ride, or the extension of the tram line. So it's a little bit what's the next steps. And also, as Vojtěch said, the question of the communication and the implication of the citizen is very important, because the work here will be very long, maybe 10 years. First of all, the studies, maybe 5 years, and after this, the works, maybe also 5 years. So it's how to keep the interest of the public, and how to continue the story with them. Because now there is really a dynamic around this master plan, but it will take a lot of time. So how to continue the story with the people, and also the politics, because in few years we will have a new government with new political persons. So how to keep the interest of all these people also.
Yeah. There's one particular thing in Brussels. I think it is this secretary of, I don't know which governmental Brussels area region. It's Pascal Smets, if I'm correct. He is really clear in the line that he wants. That I guess that helps also in this kind of projects.
Yeah, sure. He has a vision for the Brussels region, and yes, it's but sometimes it has good effects and sometimes bad effects, because all the people are not agree with his point of view. It depends on the people. So let's see the future.
Okay, very good. I have in a way myself a kind of question on this, because you both mentioned in this way, you know, you have people that want to enlarge the car space, and other ones to let's say disappear a lot of cars. So there's a lot of interest and perspectives on it, and that is also one thing that should be really looked on it. Let's say on the systemical question. And how to answer that question. So every intervention in one project has an impact in the system. And that is, of course, a step-by-step element. So I don't have answers for you as well, but thank you for the questions. João, also for your, to wrap up also this session, we are almost on time, ending time. So what question do you want to ask us or the community in the research community in itself?
I think the question that I may put to you is the question that I put for myself, and it's a question for which we are facing big difficulties in getting an answer, which is we are kind of marveled by the interest in public space. We all share technical or disciplinary or academic, or as citizens we like public space, we enjoy public space, but my preoccupation, my concern is a bit of the social equity that is fundamental when we talk about public space, and trying to understand to which extent is public space changing the structural, the foundational inequalities that we have in society. And so we have seen some very nice public space projects delivered, implemented, and after some time we don't see any significant change in the lives of people that use or live around. And so and we can also put this question: how far can we go? What are the limitations? How deep are the foundations of social inequities that are also a barrier to our own work and to its impact? So I don't know. This is when talking about the big picture of a metropolitan area, and probably it's where you have the bigger unbalances between people. This kind of raises the question. I mean, we all love the pictures by Jan Gehl, of course. It's but how far can it go when you have very expressive social inequalities? And this we are in Lisbon. Here I'm in Lisbon. Okay, it's within Europe, it's not the rich country on the opposite. But if we go into the big picture of the world, these will be even more extreme. If we go to other countries in which these inequalities are even more extreme, what's the role of public space in all of this? And I don't know, it's a more perhaps political question.
Well, at the end, we end up about a political question anyway, because it's also the question how we want to shape our society, or what kind of space we need for that society, in a way. Just let me end to thank you, of course, but with just a small story, and maybe it's personal, and maybe it's also recognizable for a lot of people. At the end, I think it's matter that an 8-year-old boy or girl can be more or less autonomous to go to school, to the sports school, or to the library or to the park. And I guess, well, of course, that's for everybody different, but it seems that it is really important to growing up process, that you have this kind of challenging as a child to do that. Today, we are depending on car accessibility, and so it's the backseat generation in basically cities where it is not necessary, because we can make larger pedestrian area and better crossings and everything. So we have all the tools to do that. And this kind of disbalance of, let's say, the region getting into the city with all the cars and then the local. And that's, of course, a kind of balance that we have to face and re-face, I guess, and ask the question if this is the right question and right answers that we have, and shall we do it not differently? But okay, it addresses a lot of questions, of course, about not only the urban areas, the more centralized urban areas, but also the region. So it's a complex system, and of course no answers in that sense, but maybe our directions. I guess the social aspect, but also environmental aspects, I think they're fundamental, as you also showed, the rivers and the green structures and the trees, very fundamental on all this. Well, for sure, more questions than answers, but I hope everybody liked it. Again, very much thank you to Milène, Vojtěch, and João to participate, to share your experience and your insights, and joined with us in this conversation. For the audience, I would like to thank you also very much for joining us in this session. I hope you like it. I hope you get inspired. And I hope you send us your questions as well to us or to the speakers or the speakers of next month. Because in this edition, we have still 2 sessions to go. And the next session will be on 4th of May. And we have the, of course, 3 other beautiful and interesting speakers round the table about the thematic technology in space. So how can technology also create new kind of shapes of streets, or do we need technology anyway to do this? And that's a kind of question for next time. For this time, João, Vojtěch, Milène, thank you very much. The audience also, thank you very much. You can find us on the website, the Future Design of Street.eu, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
So